Got Maggie Cimaroli of the St. Louis Dairy Council joining us like she does each month. We're talking Mediterranean Diet Month. Hi, Maggie.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Awesome. So, Mediterranean Month. Anytime I hear that, I always think I have to eat olives and fish.
Well, that is part of the diet, but it's so much more than that, and I guess that the word, like the name for it, the Mediterranean, it does kind of remind you of that, of all the countries, over in the Mediterranean, and that's kind of what they're known for. But really, it's just all of the different food groups. So fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, and then also fish, olives, nuts, and then healthy oils, and, of course, our favorite, dairy.
Of course, yeah. And, people who have the same disease as I can't eat 90% of those things. So what are we supposed to do?
Yes, that does always make it difficult when you have foods that you cannot eat. And that's kind of why I do like this diet, because it involves so many foods and so many different types of foods. So, if there are things that you can't eat, then maybe you can find something that you can, or you can kind of look at each of those different food groups and maybe find different ones. And while this focuses on a lot of fresh foods, you can, of course, always do, frozen or canned or, whatever kind of works for you and your household and your budget and all of those different things.
Right. And, some of us are allergic to some of those things. Everybody's got their thing. I get it. But when we hear Mediterranean diet, the first thing that pops into my head is that they don't eat a lot of ultra-processed food.
Correct, yes. So it is kind of focused on those whole foods, and when I'm saying whole foods, like you said, foods that maybe just aren't processed as much or aren't, they don't have a lot of things added to them. So, thinking about fruits and vegetables, for example, just having apples or berries or frozen fruit or even canned fruit, but not something that's like mixed into other things, just really focusing on kind of those items by themselves. Mm-hmm. With dairy, I am gonna point this out. Sometimes, dairy does go through a processing, but it doesn't have a lot of additives into it. So I think there is a difference between, processed foods or things that people kind of foresee as processed foods and foods with these extra additives, added sugars, added salt or sodium, added fat, different things like that. So, thinking about dairy, milk, of course, is there's nothing added to that. It is milk. That's all it is. And a lot of those other foods, yogurt, cheeses, those all stem from milk. They don't have a lot of extra things added. So, it's okay to have some things that are processed or some things, for example, canned fruits and vegetables. Those do go through a processing to get canned, but they don't necessarily have a lot of things added to them. So it's really kind of a mindset of just looking at maybe more of those additives, or kind of what's being added to those foods that you're eating.
Right. When I think of dairy products that are processed, it's to make them into something or to pasteurize and clean them. It's not that they've changed it into something else. I still don't understand Greek yogurt, though. Y'all are crazy. All right. So how do people plan a Mediterranean diet? What do you do?
Yeah, so again, like I said, kind of focusing on all those different food groups. So when you're making your plate, just trying to have a lot of different types of foods. So, trying to have maybe a fruit with every single meal, trying to have 3 servings of dairy. So again, maybe dairy with every single meal. That could be milk, that could be yogurt, that could be cheese. Cheese works really well with this diet. For example, feta cheese, or Parmesan cheese or things like that, if that's, yes. So there's a lot of, for example, Greek cuisine has a lot of feta cheese in it, or even tzatziki sauce, if you've ever heard of that. It's kind of like a yogurt-based sauce, but it's used in a lot of Mediterranean dishes. So dairy fits really well in that. And then, of course, adding your vegetables in there wherever you can. And then using those, I'm going to call them healthy oils, so things like olive oils, or like a vinegar and oil type salad dressing, kind of trying to fit those in wherever you can as well. And then, of course, fish. Fish is in this diet, and if fish is not your, your favorite thing, then that's okay. You can do a lean meat or some other type of protein, beans, for example, something that, dairy has a lot of protein in it. So adding, maybe add more dairy into your diet. You can do some different things that do work with what you like.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to eat is just an avocado right out of the skin, and to put some of the grated Parmesan cheese in olive oil and scoop it up with French bread. That's one of my favorite meals. So it's really healthy, and the kids look at me like I'm crazy. And then I buy that cheese that kind of has the waxy covering. I'll eat that sucker. I'll eat the whole triangle of it at one sitting because I love that stuff. I think it's called brie cheese because it's like creamy inside.
Yes, it is, and that is the avocado with the cheese and the drizzle of olive oil, or on top. That's a perfect example of something that fits into this diet. Avocado gives you, you have your vegetable, but it also gives you some of those healthy oils and healthy fats. Then you have your cheese on there, of course. You have your oil drizzled on there. So, and then like you said, brie cheese, and there are over 300 to 500 different types of cheeses out there. So, you can find something that you enjoy, add it on top of vegetables if you're not a big fan of vegetables, or add it on top of, you can mix it into your eggs in the morning, make, scrambled eggs with cheese in it, or add it to a sandwich or a salad. There are so many different ways you can add cheese to, to what you're making. And the other thing I like about cheese is it's low in lactose. So if you're somebody who has a lactose intolerant, or maybe you get kind of that upset stomach after having milk or some type of dairy food, cheese is very low in that lactose. So you might not have some of those symptoms, or as many of those symptoms that you might have with some other dairy foods.
Yeah. And, you can get your kid to drink a lot more milk if you just put a little bit of caramel in the milk and then shake that sucker so it mixes up. They'll drink milk instead of soda if you do that, and that's much, much better for them. But I was chuckling a little bit while I was reading the papers you sent in, what we should maybe talk about. And I have like the Nana Award for best scrambled eggs in the world because I add a tiny bit of garlic powder with salt and pepper, but I add Parmesan grated cheese and a little bit of milk and a dash of water, and then I put them in the blender, and they come out so fluffy. The kids cannot figure out why these eggs are so good. And I'm not going to tell them till they're older, but they tell everybody about my eggs, and it's because I add that Parmesan cheese, and they're fluffy. Because they're mixed and they're frothed.
Yes, and that's a great, and that's something that I think a lot of people like. If you like eggs, that's something really easy to add extra things to. So, like you said, add some cheese to that, add some milk to that. You can add spices and seasonings to, add whatever flavors you want to add. That's a great way, and you can add eggs. Either just eat them scrambled, or you can add them to a lot of other things as well. And yes, definitely mixing them up really well, getting them frothy. That's going to make them nice and fluffy. And
so fluffy.
It's just a different way to have them, and it's usually very enjoyable. Yes, I would agree.
You can get your kids to eat this stuff if you disguise it as something else. So there are some tricks to the trade. So what's your recipe for this week? Do we have one, or this month?
Yes, we do. So the recipe for this month is actually it's a Greek yogurt, chicken and vegetables. And, if you don't like Greek yogurt, you can use regular yogurt. Okay. You don't have to use Greek yogurt. So the thing that I like about this recipe is you actually use the yogurt as a marinade for your chicken. So you can have your chicken, and you marinate it either the night before. You can marinate it in the yogurt, put it in a Ziploc bag, seal it up tight with your spices and seasonings, which this recipe has a lot of different spices and seasonings. So things like garlic, parsley, oregano. You can use like an Italian seasoning to kind of, that has a little bit of everything in there. So you blend it all up. You put it on your chicken, put it in the refrigerator. You can do it overnight. That way your chicken's then ready to go for the next day. Or if you don't have time to do it the day before, you can just do it maybe an hour before you're going to make your recipe. So marinate your chicken, and then you have your veggies. So this recipe has zucchini, peppers, onions, and cherry tomatoes. Again, if that's not your preference, you can add whatever you want. If you like broccoli and cauliflower or carrots, add those in there instead of some of these other vegetables. It's a one-pan sheet meal, though. So you're going to put your veggies out on your sheet pan, your chicken, after you've marinated it on your sheet pan, drizzle it with olive oil, stick it in the oven, and let it bake. And it's delicious, and I love it because it's easy cleanup. Everything's in one pan. That's all you have to wash then. Mm-hmm. I made this maybe 2 weeks ago now, and my husband said it was like his favorite recipe. And I know a lot of the other girls in the office have made it as well, and they got the same reviews. So if you like cooking, this one, the marinade it's a little bit of a longer recipe because of the marinade, but it's definitely worth it. And I think, like you said, both kids and adults, I think, really enjoy this.
Yeah, and the only thing you can flip the script on the vegetables. That's probably the only thing you're going to have to go by, because I'm not going to have any of these things other than the parsley flakes in my house. But the rest of it you probably already have, other than the lemon zest. But, this is a very simple recipe. And if you put one of those vinyl sheets on your cookie sheet, there is no cleanup. You just wipe it off. So it's pretty simple stuff. And I like stuff that takes me, I put it in a bag, then I put it on a pan, and I walk away until it's done. That's it. That's what we love.
Right, and that's why this recipe is awesome. And especially, if you're busy or if you've been at work all day or, if you have kids at home, all of those things, it's nice to just have something that, like you said, you can put on a pan, leave it, not have to worry about it. And then, of course, and I didn't mention this, but of course you can sprinkle your feta cheese or whatever type of cheese you like on top as well, to give you your extra dairy and some extra flavor.
Yes. And dads, you might want to get this recipe and make it for Mom on Mother's Day. Where do they go to get the recipe, Maggie? I'm almost out of time.
Yes, you can go to our website, which is stldairycouncil.org. Recipe is on there, or our Facebook and our Instagram account, which is at STL Dairy Council.
All right. Maggie Cimaroli, she is the nutrition educator with the St. Louis Dairy Council. Thanks, Mags.
Of course. Thank you.
Bye-bye.